Now, all of a sudden, this memo basically goes out that says Trump is now the oldest nominee in history. And it's so incredibly ridiculous because they actually seem to believe that cutesy ridiculousness like that might work. I don't think it's going to work.
Now the convicted felon Donald Trump is officially the oldest presidential candidate in American history. Democrats are successfully flipping the script about age and mental fitness, and this has triggered hosts at the Fox Propaganda Network, and it's hilarious, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. As you know, one of the recurring issues of the 2024 election, and arguably the most damaging thing to President Biden's reelection bid, were questions about his age and mental fitness. Now, as I've made the case on this channel and others have as well, those questions also surrounded Donald Trump, who was only 3 years younger than Joe Biden and considerably less intelligent than the president, considerably less accomplished. But right-wing media was ideologically hardwired to emphasize President Biden's gaffes, ignore Donald Trump's. And the mainstream media did it as well. They graded Trump on a curve, even though they were more likely to scrutinize him than right-wing media. But now that President Biden is no longer seeking re-election and his successor is a 59-year-old woman who is, relatively speaking, in the prime of her life with respect to mental fitness and everything else, and certainly compared to Donald Trump, now it gives opportunity to Democrats to flip the script. And Fox is not handling it well, but I want to play a clip here of Bakari Sellers, a Democratic strategist, doing just that cynically, spitefully, and I think beautifully, flipping the script and using right-wing talking points against Donald Trump.
Because we have work to do. And so I'm going to be on the phone tonight calling delegates, getting them, whipping them up, trying to get them on board for Kamala Harris. I don't think that's going to be a difficult task. And anything else the vice president needs to do, I'll be there. Because right now, Kamala Harris has her work cut out for her. She's running against the oldest nominee for president of the United States in American history. And so when you have this type of change election, when you have this type of generational divide that you have, it's a question of whether or not you want to go backwards with Donald Trump or forward with Kamala Harris. I mean, the man is nearly 80 years old. And so the question is, can he serve another 4 years? I'm not sure he can. Yeah, because we
I do. I love it. That's awesome. Bakari Sellers is bringing the right kind of energy, and it's something that Democrats are really starting to embrace. Again, I understand that there's a level of cynicism involved, that we're doing this tongue in cheek, but I think it's great because my position from the get-go has been you need to hold the candidates, both candidates, Biden and Trump, and now Harris and Trump, to the same damn standard and evaluate them accordingly, whereas right-wing media didn't want to do that. Now, let me get to the reactions from the Fox Propaganda Network. So first, you have here Jesse Waters and Brit Hume talking about this, talking about how Democrats are now starting to emphasize the fact that Kamala Harris is considerably younger than Donald Trump and doesn't have any of the baggage associated with Trump's potential lack of fitness with respect to cognitive ability. This is what Brit Hume and Jesse Waters noted.
And some Democrats are now saying, well, Donald Trump's too old. He's 78.
Okay. We're going to hear a lot of that.
He's laughing, but you can tell he's looking down yep, we walked into that one. And indeed they did. They made this election when President Biden was in so much about age and mental fitness. And again, apparently forgot the fact that there was only 3 years separating the two men compared to the 20 years which separate, Vice President Harris and Donald Trump. Dana Perino, former press secretary for President Bush, and somebody who, she's not as crazy as Jesse Waters, Jeanine Pirro, and Greg Gutfeld, but she is a Trump supporter. She is a Trump-supporting Republican, right? She's just the more moderate of the Trump-supporting Republicans on the five. She's not happy about this. She is not happy that Democrats are flipping the script on this, and it came across on the most recent episode of The Five. This is what Dana Perino had to say. Note how furious she is.
What happened is the Democrats have this bat signal that goes out, here's the new talking point. Mm-hmm. So after saying that Joe Biden was perfectly fine and his age didn't matter at all, and he runs circles around them at the White House, now all of a sudden this memo basically goes out that says Trump is now the oldest nominee in history. And it's so incredibly ridiculous because they actually seem to believe that cutesy ridiculousness like that might work. I don't think it's going to work. Here's the guy that happened is
she's mad. Of course she's mad. Because again, what we're doing is attempting to use their own logic their own arguments against them because the argument applies. Now, listen, my position from the get-go was, there were questions about the mental fitness of both men. But the reason that I was comfortable standing by Biden was because Biden, number one, is more intelligent than Trump. He understands politics. He's more educated on politics. He has a wealth of experience with respect to foreign and domestic policy. He can, however awkwardly, answer substantively questions about foreign and domestic policy, whereas Donald Trump never has been able to because he just doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's reflected in their respective records. Biden and the Biden-Harris record, right? And Vice President Harris can lay claim to this as well. The Biden-Harris administration was infinitely more accomplished legislatively and executively than the Trump-Pence administration, right? So it's like, okay, well, if they're both old, if the polls show that Americans have doubts about both their mental fitness, and we will get to that, and they're both gaffe machines, then we have to look substantively, and substantively, Biden looks better than Trump. But now that Biden's out of the race, there are none of those questions, none, about Vice President Harris, right? She's squeaky clean in this respect. There's no polling data to suggest that a substantial number of Americans have concerns about her mental fitness, right? But those concerns still persist with Trump. And now we can brilliantly, cynically, amusingly, we can do it tongue-in-cheek, we can smile, we can laugh, we can do it condescendingly. We can actually take these concerns that the Fox propaganda network has been signal boosting one-sidedly and redirect it. And we should. We should say, hey, listen, you help create this environment where the oldest candidate, we have to relentlessly question their mental fitness. Vice President Harris is, again, she's relatively young. She's not a gaffe machine like Donald Trump. And there's no polling data to suggest that anywhere from 50 to 65% of Americans have doubts about her mental fitness. But those concerns do persist for Trump. And we're going to point that out again and again and again and again and again. And if you don't like it, then perhaps you should create a time machine, go back in time, and not pointedly, cynically, dishonestly make these one-sided concerns about President Biden. But you help create this situation, and we're going to exploit it to our advantage. Mehdi Hassan recently appeared on Piers Morgan, and this was prior to President Biden dropping out of the race. Piers Morgan claims to be a nonpartisan journalist, but he's obviously a Trump supporter, Trump sympathizer. Anytime he discusses American politics on his show, which is quite often, it always has a pro-Trump, anti-Biden bias, not just in terms of the topic, but even in terms of configuration. Okay, he usually has one Biden supporter up against 2 to 3 to 4 Biden opponents. Okay, and prior to the president's decision not to seek re-election, the topic of mental fitness came up, and Mehdi Hassan once again brilliantly pointed out to somebody who really didn't want to hear it and wasn't equipped to refute any of it, that Donald Trump is a wildly incoherent, wildly stupid man whose mental fitness is also in question.
You're going to get annoyed at me again. Sorry, Piers, I've got to say this. Again, the bias in your questions. You say Biden can't string a sentence together, nor can Trump, but you never point that out.
Oh, we can.
That's what bothers me.
But that's where you're so wrong.
Oh, we can, Kenny.
Okay.
Oh, we can, Kenny. Yes, on Monday you got really worked up.
Do one thing.
No, let me finish an answer, Piers. Can I have one answer?
Please.
One answer. Trump cannot finish sentences. On Monday, you pointed out that Biden gets people's names wrong. You don't point out that Trump gets even more people's names wrong. Last month, he said he passed a dementia test. He got the name of the doctor wrong. Instead of saying Ronnie Jackson, he said Ronnie Johnson. He's confused Obama and Biden. He confused Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley. He's confused Iraq and Syria. He confused World War II with World War III. He's confused the leader of Turkey with the leader of Hungary. He's confused the leader of China with the leader of North Korea. He called Tim Cook Tim Apple, right? And he even got his own running mate's name wrong. He called J.D. Vance J.D. Mandel a couple of years back. So Donald Trump gets way more names wrong. He's way more incoherent. He's way more ignorant.
Which one of the two of them?
Trump is much worse.
Which one of the two of them would you trust to drive you home?
And so Piers, again, he's not in a position to defend Trump. I think Piers might be so Trump sympathetic as to believe that Trump is a genius and that Trump is at the peak of mental fitness. But he is also smart enough to know he can't possibly defend Trump on air against Mehdi Hassan, nor Destiny, nor Luke Beasley, nor any of the well-prepared liberal guests who occasionally pop up, or progressive guests as well. So he has to change the subject. This isn't the first time Piers has done this, by the way. He's always changed the subject because he knows that Donald Trump is stupid, can't answer questions substantively about domestic and foreign policy, and has an anemic presidential record compared to the Biden-Harris administration. So again, I just love that. And Mehdi Hassan and others have been pointing this out in the aftermath of the president's decision and his endorsement of Vice President Harris, and we should continue to do so with one voice. Use the Republican Party's dishonesty against them because again, none of these criticisms can possibly apply to Vice President Harris. I will remind you, this isn't the only poll out there. We've talked about polls time and time again since the beginning of the year. Multiple polls find that anywhere from 50% to 60 to 65%, depending on the poll, of Americans have doubts, not just about Biden's mental fitness, but about Trump's as well. Okay, Trump is vulnerable in this respect. You also have just one anecdote out of many, but when Donald Trump met privately with Trump sympathizing CEOs, people who were predisposed to vote for him in the first place because they had a personal loyalty to him, or more than likely just because they were Republican, right? They walked out of that meeting reportedly and told CNBC about it, that they had less confidence in Trump because he was meandering and incoherent and didn't know what he was talking about with respect to fiscal policy. So folks, that's why Dana Perino and other Fox News hosts are starting to really get worked up about the fact that we have the opportunity, and it is an opportunity. It doesn't sell itself. We have to sell it, to take everything that they complained about with President Biden. I would argue dishonestly, but whatever. They made the case and they used the full power of their propaganda arm to do it and do it successfully. And now we can take all of that energy, all of those criticisms, and redirect it exclusively to Donald Trump because he's up against someone in the form of Vice President Harris, who is considerably younger, considerably more mentally fit, and considerably more educated on politics, and is part of an administration with a much better record than Trump's. So, if it's me, if it's you, I think we should do our best to trigger the Fox Propaganda Network and make sure that this remains a salient talking point from now until November. Let me know what you think in the comments.